In 1789, Benjamin Franklin died and left $4,400 to two American cities, Boston and Philadelphia. One condition: nobody touches most of it for 200 years. People thought the old man had lost his mind. 2 centuries later, those cities opened the accounts. Boston's share, $4.5 million. Philadelphia's, $2 million. Franklin didn't leave them gold. He left them time. Compound interest has one problem. It doesn't feel real while it's happening. Your brain isn't built for it. Humans evolved to think in straight lines. Plant a seed, get a plant. Walk a mile, get a mile closer. Compound interest doesn't work in straight lines. It curves slowly at first, then all at once, and by the time you feel it, most of the work is already done without you. Let me give you the clearest version of this I know. Someone offers you a choice. Option A, $1 million, cash right now. Option B, a single penny, but it doubles every day for 30 days. Most people take the million. It feels obvious. A penny is a penny. But on day 30, that penny is worth $5,368,709. The gut punch isn't just that it beats the million. It's that on day 20, you only have about $10,000. You'd have spent 20 of those 30 days convinced you made the wrong choice. That's what compound growth actually feels like from the inside. Ronald Read spent his working life as a gas station attendant in Vermont. Sylvia Bloom worked as a legal secretary in New York for 67 years. They never met. They had nothing in common except one habit. They bought shares in boring companies and never sold them. Read left $8 million. Bloom left $9 million. Neither of them was trying to get rich. They were just letting time run. Their story isn't about frugality. It's about what happens when you give a modest amount of money an immodest amount of time. This is where most people misread the whole game. We think wealth is about salary. Ronald Read and Sylvia Bloom proved it's mostly about duration. There's a thought experiment you'll see repeated constantly in personal finance. Two people, same starting conditions, same investment, different start dates. Susan starts putting in $5,000 a year at age 25. She does it for exactly 10 years, then stops, never adds another dollar. Bill starts at 35. He invests $5,000 every single year from 35 all the way to 65. 30 years of consistent contributions, 3 times as long as Susan. At retirement, Susan has more money, not a little more, more. Despite stopping 2 decades earlier, despite Bill putting in money for 30 straight years. Her 10-year head start beat his 30 years of effort. That's arithmetic, not a motivational poster, just math. The reason is something called the Rule of 72. Take 72, divide by your annual return rate, and that's roughly how many years your money takes to double. At 7%, close to the historical stock market average, your money doubles every 10 years. $1 at 25 becomes $2 at 35, 4 at 45, 8 at 55, 16 at 65. Susan's early dollars had more doublings ahead of them. Bill's late dollars only had a few. The first $100,000 is the hardest part. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner for decades, said exactly that. He wasn't being dramatic. He was describing the math. If you invest $10,000 a year at 7%, it takes roughly 8 years to hit $100,000. 8 years of putting money in every month to hit that first real milestone. After that, compounding starts doing more of the work than you are. It takes about 19 more years to go from $100,000 to $1 million, 27 years total. And that first $100,000 got you 25% of the way there, not in dollars, but in time and effort. The last $900,000 is carried mostly by math, not by you. There's a moment investors talk about. They call it the crossing, the day your annual investment gains exceed your annual salary, the day the money earns more in a year than you do. People who hit this describe it as surreal, like watching a machine you built a long time ago finally run without you. The same math works the other way. A $5 daily habit, invested instead at 7%, becomes $82,000 over 20 years. That's not an argument against coffee. It's a demonstration of what small, consistent numbers do over time. The real insight isn't stop buying coffee. It's this. Every dollar you spend at 22 is roughly equivalent to $20 at retirement. Once you see spending through that lens, certain decisions start looking different. Not all of them, just some. There's an old story about the inventor of chess presenting his game to a king. The king loved it and told the inventor to name his reward. The inventor said, 1 grain of rice on the first square, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, doubling each time, all 64 squares. The king laughed at how small the ask was. His mathematicians came back white-faced. By the 64th square, the total rice required was 18.4 quintillion grains, more than every harvest in recorded human history. The king couldn't pay? No kingdom could. That's what doubling does across enough steps. You're not playing 64 squares, you're playing 30 or 40, but it's the same math. One thing before you close this. Most people don't start early because the early phase looks like nothing. You put money in for years and the account barely moves. The snowball is tiny, rolling across flat ground. Nothing signals what's coming. So people wait until they feel ready, until they have more, until things settle, until the balance is big enough to feel like it matters. That waiting period, those years of feeling like the amount is too small to bother, that's the most valuable time you have. Not because something dramatic is happening, because the clock is running. Franklin didn't leave Boston $4.5 million. He left them 200 years.